Christian Pepper. Welcome to Second Nature. Excited to have you on, man. This is going to be a fun chat.
Dude, I'm pumped. I didn't find your podcast until you guys invited me to listen to it, but I'm really excited about the content that you're covering on it because there's a lot of knowledge and golden nuggets in there for people who are trying the professional approach to the outdoor industry and trying to build business.
There's so much out there to learn, but there's also a lot of people doing really interesting things. And I think if we do anything here, it's trying to take as many of those golden nuggets and surface them up because I think the outdoor industry is so spread out that it's difficult sometimes to see what everybody's doing. And it's not immediately obvious when stuff is working. And I think when it comes to the content game, you're one of the best. And I think you've got some really clever insight to share with a lot of the people, both people who are trying to understand how to get better at content, but also the brands that are trying to find people to work with who actually know what they're doing. Because I think there's a big gap between being good at sports and being good at content.
It's two totally separate things in my experience, so totally agree.
Yeah, if I'm on the spectrum, where would I actually land? I think maybe better at content than better at sport, but I think it is kind of a delicate balance.
I think it's the same exact thing for me. Like, how did I get to where I am? It's definitely not because of my writing. Like, the heavier part of the pull has definitely been content, in my opinion. Like, I'm above average as writer goes, but I think I'm more above average as it goes for my creation, my content creation.
Absolutely. And you've launched Dialed Creator just recently, which we're going to get into, which is really going to help a lot of athletes kind of get into the space itself. But probably the right place to start is kind of going back to your backstory. How did you kind of tip the scales into that content thing? How'd you get started? What was that moment like?
So going back like super early, I was out as a 12 and 13 and 15 and 17, like my whole youth when I was in junior high and high school. I was outside filming videos with my buddies and it was just for fun, like I don't even know if they necessarily got uploaded anywhere. Eventually they got uploaded to Vital BMX when that was a thing, and then they got uploaded to YouTube and Facebook. And I started out with the little flip camera that like had the little USB that flips out of it.
Yep.
Really, really bad quality. But we just did it because I liked to watch videos of myself riding. I was inspired watching stuff online, and that kind of was like a foundation where I advanced from one really crappy camera to a little bit better camera that was also pretty crappy to another crappy camera that was a little bit better. And it's kind of funny that like I didn't take that as a cue as something that I would like to do because I was so caught up in this idea that I was going to go to med school. My
Oh,
parents, like growing up, were like, "You should consider, like med school and whatnot." And I did really well in school, and 4.0 through all of high school, all of junior high, got in on full ride scholarship to college. But I decided med school wasn't for me after like 2 years worth of classes. And that's when I decided I was going to go the engineering route because I liked working with my hands. I liked building stuff, all these like bike projects and building projects that I did growing up led me to think that, okay, engineering is the right call for me. And so I did really cool internships like at Tesla and at Envy as I was a college student, and got my first job at Yeti helping design carbon fiber bikes. And I was like, this is the dream job. It's going to be so sick. I'm so excited. And I lasted not even 2 years before I was like, this just isn't the right fit for me. And that's when I transitioned into content creation, which I had kind of been doing all along anyways.
so you'd been making content. Like I feel like everybody who rides or does any sport, like content creation sort of comes along with it because you want to have proof of the gnarly thing that you did. But I do think there's like a difference between documenting something and also creating the storytelling aspect of it and developing it out. And I've got to imagine that was sort of what you were building up that entire time, is sort of that muscle of like how to tell a bit more of a story, or how to turn it from just like proof of gnarliness to something useful, right?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I was putting text over my videos and like adding soundtracks that I felt like matched the energy and including some of the storytelling at a very basic level since, I was filming at 540p and 360p back on these really old crappy cameras. And so I think that it's fun now to look back at the evolution and realize, like, okay, I was kind of doing this all along. Just, it's evolved to different levels as I've gotten older and had access to better tools and just spent more time learning about how it works and how to pull it off more effectively to get solid viewership and solid engagement.
It does seem like, as far as technology goes, it's way, way easier now to do. I started in the VHS era, to completely date myself. My first three releases were on VHS, and then we moved to DVD. But we used to have to film on tape, and then you'd have to like put it in and digitize it into your computer, and then you could edit it, and then you had to print it back out. Anyway, there was a lot of stuff
That's
you had to
amazing.
do. Now you just like pull out your phone, and all of a sudden you've got a million views on a video. I know it's obviously more complicated than that sometimes, but not always. So
Right. No,
what
definitely.
how did you take that first step into full-time content creation though? So you were working doing these engineering things, and then you're like, all right, this isn't working. I'm gonna be in content creator. Like, there wasn't a playbook then. There's barely one now. There's about to be one thanks to you, but what was that? What was that like?
Okay, so I moved to the Bay Area to do my engineering internship at Tesla. And of course I took my bike. I'm young, I'm married at this point. I'm like a senior in college and I'm doing this internship at Tesla and riding my bike in my spare time and hanging out with my wife. And my wife is like, "You post these fun mountain bike videos, but like you only have 900 followers. I feel like you could be more if you actually tried." And I was like, "Oh, so you think I'm not trying, huh?" And I took that as a challenge that where I said, "Okay, you know what? I'm actually going to try." And like I hadn't really applied my education or like any of my, I guess, any effort really to creating content at that point. I kind of just did what I'd done all along, which was what felt fun and felt natural. And so I started to pay more attention to the analytics. I started to pay attention to the gear that I was using to film the videos. And, that led to, I think I had about 20,000 followers at the time that I eventually graduated from college and was working for Yeti. And so I'm working for Yeti, and this brand reaches out to me in my DMs as I'm working my engineering job, and they say, "Hey, we really dig what you're doing with your personal social media. Would you be willing to do something similar for our brand?" And it was a local company in Alpine, Utah, where I grew up. And I kind of knew the guys and knew people adjacent to them. And so I was like, you know what? Sure. And I gave them like an hourly rate that seemed reasonable to me. And they were like, okay, sure. And I realized after a few months that we were having a lot of success and that the money that I was making per hour was more valuable to me than my engineering career. And I was like, what the heck? Like, maybe I could find other people who want me to do this for them. And so the end of 2020 rolls around, and there'd just been layoffs and layoffs because the bike industry was like having the scare at this point. It wasn't like the big boom yet.
Mhm.
And so I got laid off, and honestly, it wasn't that good of a fit for me at Yeti, anyways. And so looking back, I would say it was really, really tough to lose that job in the moment, especially because we were about to adopt our second kid, which is a very big financial pull. And, being a freshly graduated kid who has a wife and one kid about to drop a bunch of money on adoption, I was scared, and it was really hard. But looking back now, I'm like, thank you so much that this happened. I could not have asked for it to happen. Like, I wish it had happened sooner, honestly.
Yeah.
And so I, at that point, just went full on into, okay, I'm going to put together these proposals to these different companies that I'm finding on social media of, if you guys are trying to drive better viewership and better engagement, I know how to do it. And within 4 months, I had enough income to more than replace what I had lost, which was like a really nice, I guess, pat on the back that like I could do it, that I was going to be all right.
Yeah. Yeah. You unlock the formula when it comes to content creation. And it's interesting to hear you talk about it because I think a lot of people that would have had success as, making bike content in general would have likely just gone the route of like, well, I'm getting views on my bike stuff. I just want to have more sponsors. And you went the other route of like, wait, I think I can actually just do this work with brands and actually help brands build their social presence, and that the my own stuff is just going to come along, whenever it does. Like it's sort of a bonus, right? How did you think
Yeah.
about that? Were you just targeting like I'm basically just going to be like an agency for brands that need social help?
Yeah, so my agency that I've been running since that point in time is called Westpaw Media, like westpawmedia.com. And it's pretty much just born out of necessity to like provide for my family with the skills that I had and the opportunities that seemed like they were pulling up organically at the time. And I've been really fortunate to have an obsession with analytics. And so all along, I took very close track of where is this company before I step in? What's a snapshot of their analytics, of their insights? Where are they? And then after a year or two, take a snapshot again and say, holy cow, we really moved the needle.
Yeah.
And I think that that was kind of the backwards approach to like go for the big dogs first, where I feel like what I'm trying to do now with like a creator to creator basis is kind of like the easier version that seems like it should have been the first step. But I'm really glad that I did it that way because, I had the professional background, I had the degree, I had a lot of sales experience, and it was just the right order of operations for me to get into this.
It does feel pretty challenging to be able to say no to, when you've got the data of like, I can take a brand from here to here and I have the data to prove it, especially when social is so much more data than some of the other marketing levers are a little bit more, you know, art than science. This seems like pretty straightforward. We can get you to this point. There are, at least I've got to imagine, more KPIs tied to numbers when it comes to social than some of the other categories, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it's a balancing game because social media taken organically, of course, there's numbers that you can track viewership, engagement, likes, comments, share saves, all these different metrics that are being reported by Instagram's API, but they're completely separate ecosystem from what a business owner or a CEO is looking at. And that's how much revenue am I driving as a company? And it's hard to really tell is my is this sale that just came in attributable to the social media post that's going viral right now. And that's a hard part of the social media business that really requires you to bring in ads, paid ads where you can start to have some directly trackable attribution between the content and the sales that the company is generating. And that's an area of this space that I'm starting to foray into. But I think that brand awareness and brand lift have a lot of value. And depending on the company that you're working with, they already know that.
Does it ever seem challenging to you working with those brands of knowing what you know in terms of how to get high performance out of social content, but having to translate that to someone who has an idea in their head for their brand that doesn't understand what the formula actually is?
100%. So there will be brands who, yeah, are very married to showcasing their brand in a certain light. And it's a light that maybe in 2016 to 2019 could have built them a large following, but it's kind of like a vanity light where it's like trying to flex your company as a cool product or as a cool lifestyle. And the reality is nobody cares about the vanity posts anymore. Everybody just goes on social media to be entertained or to get value in some form. And a company touting themselves, that ain't it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Fascinating. That's got to be some fun conversations because I feel, especially in this world, that everything is like needs to happen yesterday and everything is on like a quick deadline because you want to be in the moment with what's happening on social. Do you have any tactics that you use to sort of like slow things down or sort of pre-plan or just kind of deal with the hectic nature, because it just seems like there's so much coming at you at all times when you're dealing with stuff in social.
I'd say there's two sides to that. There's the side where it's definitely valuable to capitalize on trends that are happening in the moment, and you can see really solid success from that. But that won't build your baseline and your foundation of a solid following who really cares about and jives with what you do. It's really more about how you treat them the rest of the time when there's not trends to capitalize on. If you're still helping the viewer feel like their time and their attention span is valued. And so, trends are fun, but really, what am I doing to serve my audience the other 364 days of the year?
Yeah, yeah. So, so just one more thing on this agency, and then I want to kind of move back into the creator side of things specifically. But you're still obviously working with clients. You're still doing a lot of this kind of stuff, I would imagine. How do you manage it all? Because your content on your own channel, plus making stuff for other brands, plus building out this course. What are you doing to kind of balance out all of this stuff and all the deliverables that need to be done?
It's a lot, yeah. And I am pretty organized with Google Drive and have, compartmentalized all of the work into different folders and different spreadsheets, and that's really helpful. I also hired on my first contract help earlier in 2024, which has been awesome. A guy that I'm working with that I've spent months and months training who is killing it, honestly. And unfortunately, for unforeseen circumstances, he's going to have to move elsewhere. And so I'm kind of in the process of replacing that person. So I guess if there's any young marketers slash content creators who want an injection of knowledge and want some part-time work, hit me up. But then also I use this app that I found earlier this year called Motion, that it's, I think, usemotion.com, that helps you take all of your to-dos and prioritize them and time block them and schedule them based off of how soon they're due and what, uh, I guess, importance level they are. And that's been pretty helpful to me in just keeping track of all the stuff that needs to get done, getting it done by the deadline, and getting it done in the order of priority that it needs to. So, those are some of the tools that I think are helpful to me right now.
I'm gonna have to look into that because my to-do list is an absolute rat's nest at the moment.
I was just keeping notes in like literally a text to myself. Like I write a text to myself all the time still.
Mhm.
But then I have this new step where like, okay, I'll take the text to myself and I'll go into Motion and I'll create these items that need to get done. And it's quite a bit more helpful at prioritizing and getting the stuff done that needs to get done.
That's good. That's really good. Right now, I'm using literally just a little wire-bound notebook, and this thing has actually been a bit more of a hack. When you actually write something down and you can flip back through it, I don't know. There's so many good digital things out there that are getting the job done, but nothing for me at this point beats just writing it down on paper, which I did
Writing it
not.
down is awesome. I kind of also want one of those massive, I think the company is called Big Ass Calendar,
Oh yeah,
where
yeah.
you have like a 4x5 calendar on your wall that has, and you can see stuff that's months out and it's like written in real sized handwriting. I think that's a cool idea.
I've got not that one, but just one I found on Amazon that was like half the price because
Nice.
it's dry erase, and I use that to actually build out my content calendar for my YouTube long forms, and it was
I love that.
such a great feeling just to know, like, I can tell you what video I'm going to make from now until October, and obviously I'll probably slide in a few other videos between now and then, but just to be able to take everything on your brain and put it out on the calendar and mark out what events you're going to be at, like Sea Otter or TrailCon or
Yeah.
whatever. It's been really helpful just to like take your brain and put it on paper.
Honestly, I see a wall in my office that would be perfect for that. So you might have to send me the link.
Yeah, yeah. It's a basic one, but it's just, yeah, a little dry erase and a little just map it out. Man, it just helps me feel less stressed when I know, okay, these are the things that definitely need to get done this week, and especially when it comes to making content, you can't do it in the moment, and maybe we could talk about that too, because I've been talking to a lot of people who want to get into the content creation world who are doing one thing and want to just like step into it. And one of the first pieces of advice that I try to give people is that you can't get down the rabbit hole of thinking about just one video only. You need to think in formats, right? Have structure to what you're doing. So instead of like, I'm going to make this one video and I hope it goes viral, it's more like, why don't you come up with 5 basic things that you could repeat on a regular basis? You know, like for me, at least with my mountain bike coaching stuff, I'll do, okay, here's like the 30-day thing. And this is going to be a month's worth of content. And I know exactly what those 30 days are going to be. Or here's a series on the different games that we play to get better at mountain biking. And when you start thinking in more like series based content, then you can put the energy back into making like day by day by day. But if you start thinking like only one at a time, you can get totally lost after like two or
Yeah.
three and completely burned out. But I'd love to hear what kind of advice you give people that are sort of, I mean, I guess it's a bit nuanced for people that are really getting into it or really want to dive in, but even getting people off the fence who are amazing athletes that just aren't doing the content thing right. What is some of the advice that you typically give out to people?
Yeah, I mean, so going back to your thought about series, I think it's really helpful for two reasons. It's really helpful to the creator because having some structure around what you are creating kind of helps narrow down what you can do. And I feel like content creation has such a wide sphere of I could literally create content about anything that putting some constraints on the problem helps the creativity be a little bit more open because you're not overwhelmed with so many possibilities. It's like, okay, I have this series, I need to keep my brain movement within these rails. It's a little bit easier to work like that. But then also for the viewer, somebody who is watching content, um, there is really big appeal in having series because it gives structure to what you're consuming. And if you feel like, oh, okay, like I remember the video yesterday was part 4, I'm looking forward to part 5 today. It brings a little bit of anticipation for what's about to be shared. It also kind of helps just draw things together to make it more consumable. And then people have a reason to visit your profile and go look at some of the other parts. You know, maybe they didn't discover you until part 17 that eventually went viral, and they're like, oh, there's 16 more parts to this. I'm going to go dive in and look at these. And I'm sure that that's probably some of what happened with you with your, your days of skills that you did a while back on the Super Rider channel. Do you remember which one like got the most viewership?
You know, I don't really know. And what was interesting is that it was sort of accidental. So it, I was actually out on a run on Thanksgiving, and I was thinking like, what am I going to do in December? I'm really close to 100K on YouTube. What if I did like a 30-day sprint of just like as much content as I basically could? Could I get to 100K? And so I was like, you know what? I'll do a different skill every single day. If I made a lot of people do that Vlogmas or whatever, where they make a YouTube video every day in December. And so I was like, I could do my take on that would be to do a skill video every day. But then the reality sets in of like, it takes a long time to edit skills videos. So how could I speed up this process where I can still put out a video that's useful every day? It's not garbage, but also, I could still check the box. And the 30-day thing kind of came through. And then I was like, well, maybe I could make an Instagram version that sends people to the longer video on YouTube as well. And if I could figure out a way to put those two things together, that might be interesting. And so that entire thing was built to help my YouTube get to 100K, thinking that that was going to be the hook. And the interesting thing about it is that that 30-day process did almost nothing for my YouTube channel at all. And in fact, speaking to, I was talking to a YouTube consultant like last summer, and he was like, that was probably the worst thing you could have done for your channel because the length of those videos was shorter than your average. And so it brought your overall average view time for your entire channel down dramatically. Like you should get rid of those videos as fast as you possibly can, which I didn't realize. But what did end up happening is at that time, I hadn't been utilizing, I wasn't serious about Instagram at all. I hadn't been really putting much on there. I do like a little cut down here or there. And at that point, I just was kind of throwing stuff on my Instagram just to have something there. I had maybe 2,500, 3,000 followers on YouTube or on Instagram, while meanwhile I had almost 100K on YouTube. And doing the 30-day clips, having my first Instagram series that again supported the YouTube but still had lots of value in it, took me from 3,000 to 20,000 over the course of December of that year. that was
Nice
like
work.
that was the moment where I was like, "Oh, wait. I think I just stumbled on something here." Because up to that point, I'd actually had like a decent run on TikTok with a bunch of short form content, but TikTok felt like cheating a little bit. Like I didn't know why everything was doing as well as it was, and I think I just like hit something just right for long enough, and I built it up to I think, like 94, and then it just like dead stopped for a year. And so I'd kind
Yeah.
of given up on TikTok. I was like, whatever, I'm there, I've got stuff, but it's not going to do anything for me. And to be honest, I don't think the bike industry was serious about TikTok in a meaningful way. Maybe you have a different opinion of this, but I didn't see anybody reacting to the following there in any meaningful way. And truthfully, I didn't see anybody doing that on YouTube either. It wasn't until my Instagram started growing rapidly that I even got responses from the companies that I wanted to work with.
That's very interesting. So I would assume that your recent announcement of partnership with Marin, the needle on that conversation probably moved as a result of your Instagram work.
A little bit of both. Part of
Okay.
it was a video. Basically, the backstory of that one is that I was doing a series of tutorials that Jensen wanted me to do. Jensen USA, the for people that aren't in the bike industry listening to this pod, is like a big online bike shop. They wanted me to do a tutorial series on an e-bike, and I didn't have an e-bike. And my friend Matt is the CEO of Marin, and so I hit him up. I'm like, "Can I borrow a bike? I know you guys sell through Jensen. I just need an e-bike." And so he's like, "Yeah, no problem." Sends me an e-bike, and I made 5 videos for Jensen. How to track stand, how to lift your front wheel, back wheel, basic stuff. And the track stand video from that series went to like the long form went to 300,000 views, which is like still the biggest video on my channel. And so then I returned the bike to him, and I was like, "Hey, thanks. That ended up going really well. Can I have another bike to do this next series I want to do? It's going to be a 30-day challenge. And I want to do it on a dirt jumper because I feel like that's the cheapest bike that anyone can get. And anybody can do this stuff on any bike, but I'm going to use your Alcatraz if that's okay." Sure. So they sent me the next bike. And then that performed really well. And then they gave me another bike. And then I started making more of the tutorial specific videos, like flat ground type stuff in that January. And so basically all this past year, we've been just cranking views. And definitely the Instagram stuff has played a big role in that conversation.
Nice. That's awesome. So what other companies have you been, I guess, more appealing to as a result of your efforts on social media? I know I saw the Marin announcement. What else has been moving forward for you?
I've been talking to Smith Optics a fair bit, working with them. I did a thing with the feed at the end of last year, which I honestly like. I think there was way more that I think I wanted to do with that, and it was sort of like a thing that came together last minute, which is partially why I was asking you like how to slow things down because Black Friday is just absolute mayhem for content creators to begin with, and I got kind of shuffled up in the mix there. I'm still happy. I'm really happy with what we were able to put together, but I think I had a lot more in mind of what I was hoping to do with that. So maybe more to come there. But yeah, it's been I think difficult as a creator trying to navigate the waters of like where do I put my time? And I think it's interesting that you went to the production side first before you really built out your own kind of following and your own program. I'd love to know, from your perspective, what was the decision to build out your own stuff? Is that just like another lever where you could bring more partnerships in, where you could kind of use it as a calling card to prove your credibility as a creator? Like, how do you think about your own Instagram channel when it comes to what your actual business is?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've been lucky to never consider my personal channel my bread and butter. Even though I'm learning everything that I'm implementing on clients' behalfs from my own channel, right? Like my channel is the breeding grounds for new ideas and um, new strategies and ways that I'm going to approach things. But it's because I'm going to create content no matter how you cut the cake, no matter what's happening. I love riding my bike and I love shooting videos. And like, you could ask any of my buddies who go out and film with me who shoots the most clips on the hillside. It's not the person that I hired to be my filmer there. It's me because like I just love shooting videos of people trying to get the best angles, trying to, craft a compelling storyline. And so like I'm gonna do it no matter what happens. And it's been really fun to see my personal channel grow so much from all of the experimentation and all of the attention to analytics and all of the work that's gone into it. Um, because now, I'm at the point where now I could make a full living just from my personal channel. And, you know, given what I was making before as an engineer, like I could just totally forego all the agency stuff, all the dialed creator stuff, any of the other work and just do my personal channel and make a comfortable living out of it. But I love the challenge of the different pieces and the different moving parts and these other ventures. And I love working with brands and trying to help their companies succeed as well. And this new foray into dialed creator is, I want to work with more athletes because I feel like they're the most passionate ones who really love what they're doing and are going to chomp at the bit to try and make a full-time job out of it. And I like working with people who are excited. So going back to your question, like how do I think about it for my own channel? I don't know. Like I just think about it as I love this and I'm going to do it anyways. So
Yeah.
I've been lucky that it's worked out on multiple fronts for me.
That's cool. I feel like so much of my stuff is just test and learn. I started a newsletter just because I feel like there's something really powerful having the email addresses of everybody that is following you and being able to reach them and have a direct line of communication and not having to, scream through the noise of the algorithm to get to the people who signaled that they want to hear from you.
Right.
But so many of that stuff is exactly that, like test and learn. Like, hey, this actually worked really well for me, and I know exactly what I need to do to translate that for you. It's an interesting approach to use these channels in that way. I want to talk
Just
about
wait until Gmail starts playing algorithm games with our data over there too.
can't can't wait. Well, let's talk about Dialed Creator because this is really exciting, and this is a lot of what I was hoping to talk about today. You launched at the end of last year, I think it was. You launched Dialed Creator, which is basically sort of a course and a cohort of athletes who are trying to become professional content creators to get to the point that you're talking about, where it's like all I have to do is make content for my channels, and I could live a comfortable life. That sounds like the best thing ever, not having to deal with the pressure of a job or pressure of competition, but just being able to make great content that performs well and sort of serve the partners that you want to. Can you talk a little bit about kind of what kicked off? Like, why did you start this thing? You were already busy enough and successful enough doing your own agency and creating your own content. Why take up a bunch of creators under your wing and help them get to this next level?
Yeah. One of my good friends who you're actually a teammate of now on Marin, his name is Owen. He's Sandy Luhu on Instagram. He was a creator who I saw potential in because he has a solid writing capability and he was already creating videos on a consistent basis. And this was back in 2021, I think, when I was working with Zoic, who's a clothing company in the mountain biking sphere, and helping them not just create content for their channel, but bring together a crew of ambassadors who aligned well with the brand and leverage those ambassadors to generate good content for Zoic's channel. And it was obviously in my best interest for his video content to perform well for the client. But as a result of working pretty closely together and kind of giving him feedback and guidance on how to structure his videos and how to concept and script and edit these videos, he started to really pick up steam, and he had, multiple 10 million plus view videos on Instagram, as like that I filmed and like helped him edit and put together. And it was really cool to see him get picked up by Marin and get picked up by other brands. And I started to realize, okay, like, I can reproduce what I've done on my own channel, not just for brands, but for individual creators as well. And I've done that since then with multiple other athletes who are just in my immediate vicinity, who I see as good people in my local community that I want to give back to. And I'm starting to realize, like, okay, like I have something that I can offer to a wider audience. Let's figure out who, is interested in working with me on this. And so Dialed Creator was born because I've been building this course honestly for 2 years, that I've been interviewing brands and talking to brands about what they look for in athletes and how they like to work with athletes. And the funny thing is, coming into it, I really felt like, this feels a little bit cringe that I'm trying to help riders who maybe are more content creators than athletes learn how to take budget from these other athletes who are like top dogs. And that was part of why it's taken me so long to really jump into Dialed Creators, because I was worried about what the core industry would think. And then I had two realizations. And the first realization was that the core customer consumer for our industry is the average Joe who goes out and rides, who loves the content that Jess the Maker and Normal MTBer and all these other more approachable creators are making. And I don't really think that we are going to target that audience with the most core, hardcore, badass riding that exists on Instagram that just performs well as because it's so good at riding, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that we're going to help grow our industry by getting more normal people interested in it. So yeah, like this idea that our core consumer who funds the mountain bike industry is a person between probably 35 and 55 who just wants to consume relatable, approachable content that brings together the skill and fun of mountain biking with storytelling. And that's my target demographic. Like, I'm not trying to get people who are, stoked and already hardcore athletes into riding. They're already into riding. They've already got an EP. They're already getting 40% off from their buddy that works at a bike shop. That's not who funds my industry.
Yeah.
My industry is funded by the average Joe. And so that's who my content is for. That was my first realization. My second realization was that companies are frothing for more creators who know how to approach people, how to be approachable, the reality, and how to be professional about it. Because most companies who I go to trying to land a partnership, when they figure out how my system works and how my deliverables work and how I set up my contract, it's very common that I hear, damn, I wish that there was more athletes who are approaching this like you are, because we need you as every athlete on our roster who can, reach the average person who's actually spending full price on our bikes, who can, make it more family oriented or more just relatable. And companies are open books when I show up to the table and say, what are you looking for in athletes? Because they want more people who understand how to do it well. And so that's what I'm trying to create with Dialed Creator. Is the first step is I need a bunch of athletes who can understand how to do the content well. That's step one, and that's what my boot camp is that I've been advertising lately. It's already all filled up. Is like how to create the good content, and then step two is how do I leverage this content and this channel that I've built to work with brands. And that's what I'll talk about more so in the coming months, is how to leverage your content and your channel to work with brands.
That's so cool, man. I had a very similar conversation. I was talking to a brand not too long ago, and they said, oh man, I bet you move more product than our top pros do, like combined. It's like, surprise. It is funny though, like being approachable and being at that sort of entry point for people coming into the industry and being a welcoming face and giving people sort of their first steps into the world. That's what's actually going to grow the sport. And also, when you're doing stuff like that, you become sort of like a one of one, or you're competing with a very small amount of people versus line up at any race and you're competing against anywhere from 25 to 2,500 people. Like
Right.
where would you rather compete, in the area where there's not a lot of people, but those people are bringing a ton of value, or a ton of people that are fighting for a sliver of value? And also, even if you win the race, you're reliant on that event doing a good job publicizing the race itself and the pre and post and all that kind of stuff. I think it's been really interesting to watch like the UCI series of when Red Bull was doing it and the content that they were putting out and how free and available it was and what impact that had on the industry. And now it's sort of behind a paywall. And what does that mean for the racers themselves? And oh, now it costs even more to be a part of it. Like it's interesting on the competitive side how much more difficult it's getting, but on the other side of content creation, it's actually getting easier, and it feels like it's more meaningful to these people.
I think so too. Yeah, it's really surprising to see people in our industry who haven't really leveraged social media yet. And I've had a lot of one-on-one conversations and come to find out that what they are able to make as far as a living goes is nowhere near what I think that they are worth, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And once I understand, like, oh, okay, like you're not doing this with your social media, you're not doing this, then I see a pathway to help take them from this incredible athlete who is just barely scraping by to, hopefully being able to do what I'm doing or way more. If I can do, I don't know, 130,000 followers on Instagram and make a comfortable living from social media as, I don't know, like a 6 out of 10 rider. Imagine what some of these like higher level athletes who are competing on a world stage could do if they learned how to leverage the content. And I'm super excited because actually multiple of the athletes that I'll be working with in this first iteration of the boot camp. The boot camp, by the way, is like this 8-week program that I'm going to run where I take creators who I've deemed a good fit. It was like an application basis only, where I accepted, a group of 6 creators, and I'm going to teach them all of the stuff and the strategy and the tools that I use that have built my channel to what it is. And I've got a few athletes in that who I'm really excited to see what we can do, because they're, like top level talent as it comes to the riding side of things. And if we can up their content to kind of balance out their athleticism, it's pretty exciting to see what might come of that.
That's the winning combo in the Venn diagram, right? Like the more you can cross over those two, it's just they've got the built-in following already from their athletic pursuits and what they're capable of doing. But if you can start to give a little bit more of the behind the scenes, you could build out something really, really fascinating.
I think so too.
What's the thing that most athletes right now who are on the fence or who are trying to become content creators, maybe they've already kind of started their path, where do you think are some of the common areas where you see them kind of missing the boat? Maybe they've already decided like, I gotta do more of this, but they're not getting it yet. What do you think is sort of the main thing they're missing?
95% of people's issue per se is just the consistency and like the frequency. I think I had to post thousands of times to figure out what worked and pay attention to the analytics all along the way. And I think that that's the number one problem. When I find somebody who is consistent and I notice their consistency, it's pretty common that like I'll just shoot them a message and say, "Hey, I love that you're being consistent because I know that that's the hardest roadblock.
Yep.
Do you want to link up and I'll give you 3 tips that have been helpful for me along the way?" One of those stories is Carter Metcalf. If you've seen some of his content, he's been pretty big
Okay.
in the mountain biking industry over the last year. When he had 2,000 followers, I found his content through a friend of mine who sent it to me and said, "Hey, look at what this kid is doing. He's using mountain bikes to help overcome his struggle with Tourette's." And I was like, "Okay, that sounds pretty cool." And so I followed his channel just to kind of be nice. But then I noticed that he popped up with a new video every single day. And when he did that for like 20 or 30 days, I was like, this kid has what 95% of people don't.
Yeah.
And so I got him on, I sent him a DM and I was like, "Hey, I love what you're doing. If you're interested in some tips, I'd be happy to hop on a Zoom call if one of your parents is around." And sure enough, we get on a Zoom call. I'm able to teach them a few things that are helpful. And not only does Carter's channel go to 100K before the end of the year, which I don't think I can take, I can take a fraction of the credit for, a very small fraction. But also, Carter's dad was, the CMO of a big outdoor industry company. And he's like, my team doesn't implement this stuff. Like, they have no idea this stuff that you're teaching us about. Will you come and be a consultant? And like, that was one of my, agency deals that I worked on during 2023 and 2024.
Amazing.
So it's pretty fun to see like what consistency can get you. And I think Carter is a really good testament to that, the biggest roadblock for most creators is consistency.
Man, absolutely. And also I think that with consistency, not only is, your visibility with the audience, but also if you are paying attention while you're being consistent, you start to see patterns emerge. You start to see stuff pop up that maybe you wouldn't have noticed if you were posting once a week. You start to see, wait, something's working here, or something's not working here. What am I doing on the next video? There's that great Mr. Beast thing where he's like, make 100 videos and get 1% better at every single time, and you'll be surprised where you are by that 100th video. You won't need my advice anymore. And I think that's so true about the consistency of if you're doing it and paying attention, because there's a difference, right? Like if you're posting 100 times with intention and you're digging into the data, you're going to learn stuff that's going to make you better. I think
$100%.
one of the things that I figured out, which is extremely tactical, but I realized that there was a difference between making a video and how average view time actually impacted short form videos. And that this was on TikTok at the time, but like a 20-second video needed a different percentage of average view duration than a 40% or 60% video. And what I was doing before that was just filling the minute because I had a minute to work with. And when I started realizing that, oh no, you actually have to hit, this benchmark for a 20-second video, you have to keep them this long, and that's going to send a signal to the algorithm, versus if it's a 40-second video, you have to get this benchmark. When that particular piece of data unlocked in my brain, it completely changed my content creation forever.
Yeah, watch rate, right?
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think that's something that a lot of people don't understand with social media yet, because you see still so much of the cinematic intro, and it is crushing people's view, like their watch rate and their engagement, because they think like, "Oh, I saw so many cool ski films back in the day that opened with this epic shot of the sunrise over the horizon." And the reality is, Instagram's average watch time is 1.5 to 2 seconds. And so, if you can't snag a viewer and keep them on your channel and engage them within those first 1.5 to 2 seconds, they're going to scroll to the next video that's more exciting than yours. And you'll never break that barrier and get them to stick around and give you the time of day. And so once you start really attacking the question of how do I increase my watch time, how do I increase my engagement, that's where stuff starts to unlock. And that's honestly, that's what Dialed Creator is a whole swath of techniques and tools and approaches to increase your watch time and your engagement.
Once you have all that stuff figured out, you could tell whatever story you want, like you have the basics in place. Then it's like you said, I could make content about anything and for anyone because I understand how it's supposed to work. And if you understand the hook, then it's just a matter of writing a relevant hook for that brand or for that product or for yourself or whatever you're putting out, right? It's not simple by any means, but it is a little bit more obvious when you understand sort of the nature of how this stuff actually comes together.
You're totally right.
I'd love to talk about brands because there's a lot of people listening to this podcast who work at brands. And when I worked at brands prior to this, one of the biggest struggles I had was actually sorting out, finding the right people to work with. Who are the creators that not just match my brand, but actually know what they're doing? And I can't just search a hashtag and automatically come up with good creators. So what are the signs that a brand should be looking out for when they want to work with an athlete who knows what they're doing when it comes to content?
Yeah, so one of my approaches when I'm looking for creators who would be a good fit for the brand is I'll actually go on the brand's channel and I'll share about one of the creators that we are already working with and how we're stoked on the partnership. And that always spawns new DMs and messages from people who are like, "Oh, I want to work with you." And those are usually really good organic fits, but they have to be very closely vetted because you're going to get a lot of just hoo-haws that show up and are like, "Oh, I want to, I want to create content for you. I want to get sponsored." Just like anything, right? Like when you open up the sponsorship can of worms, you're going to have a ton of people flying in saying, "Yes, me, 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 me." But you will find the people who are already organically following your channel and engaging with your product. And then if you can vet them correctly, it's going to be a much better fit because they're already excited about what you're doing intrinsically. So I'll go in and I'll look at those creators and I'll say, okay, like this guy has 20,000 followers. Let's take a look at his average viewership. And if I scroll over to his Reels tab and I see that, oh, his average viewership is sub 5,000 views, he can't even get his audience that follows him to watch his content, then I really pull back and I say, okay, like, what are the chances that he could get my product in front of his audience? That's even hard. It's even harder to get a product to get good viewership than it is for just his organic content to get good viewership. But if I scroll along and I see somebody who has, I don't know, 10,000 followers, he has half the following, he's maybe, seemingly half as interesting to the brand, but I look at his viewership and he's hitting 20 or 25,000 views per video with spikes at 70 and 100,000. It's like, okay, now we found somebody who understands how to leverage the following that he has, understands how to create content in a way that reaches 100% plus viewership, right? Where not just the 20 or sorry, not just the 10,000 people who follow his channel are seeing it, but he's being actively discovered by new people outside of his following. And that indicates to me a page that is healthy, that is probably growing instead of losing followers like a lot of channels are these days, and who probably understands how to structure a video in such a way that if he were given the opportunity or she were given the opportunity to throw a product in, could probably pull it off and still get good viewership. And that's what's most important to me is actual impressions for the brand.
When a brand works with an athlete, it's not always just the simple equation of like we give you a product, you put it on your page. There should also be a little bit of back and forth of like, could you make us specific custom content that we can run on our page? And the collab function has been great for doing both those things at the same time. But do you see value in athletes just creating content for the brand itself? And what do you think that looks like?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really valuable thing that I don't see a lot of creators taking advantage of. And it's probably really good for creators to do that because they don't feel the same pressures to conform to their traditional style that they do if it were going to go live on their personal channel. They probably feel a little bit more creative freedom to talk a little bit more about the product or do things a little more differently than they would if it were going to live on their personal channel. And I think that is what I've been able to engage in by helping so many companies, whether they're mountain bike related or not, or whether they have my face included in the video or not, to create content about products that performs well. So, like an interesting case study is I worked with a local retail store in the Salt Lake Valley for all of 2022, I think, and 2023, who sells overland gear. So that's like rooftop tents and fridges that you could install on your Jeep or your whatever it may be that you're going to take out into the hills and go camping with this cool vehicle. And that has nothing to do with my personal channel. So I knew I couldn't leverage my face. I couldn't leverage my channel to help them grow. And honestly, I didn't really want to. Like, I wanted this to be an agency thing that was separate from Christian Pepper. And I learned a lot about how to talk about products on this channel and how to showcase them in an algorithm optimized way. And, sure enough, like the channel grew from literally zero to about 25,000 view or 25,000 followers over, I think, 18 months or so. And we had a video go over 8.5 million views. We had another video go over a million views, another video go over three-quarter million views. And it was because you start to embrace different styles of content creation because you're not strangulated by this idea of it has to conform to my own page. So I absolutely invite content creators out there to work with their sponsors to make more brand specific videos that won't live on the creator's page, that will live on the brand's page, and see what you can learn from that interaction.
That overland thing is really interesting because you're having to go outside of the mountain bike world to create content, and I've got to imagine you're also drawing inspiration from outside of the mountain bike world to test and learn with some of this other stuff. Is there anywhere else that you are paying a lot of attention to when it comes to sort of cross pollinating, learning stuff from other industries and kind of bringing it back to the world of athletes?
No, I mean, I would say I take a lot of inspiration from just my daily scrolling. Like, I consider it um, part of my work to have to scroll through Instagram, but it's not just what I think the average scroller is doing, which is just consuming content for their personal entertainment. I'm more so scrolling through and paying attention to the numbers of how well did this perform, how was it structured, what type of call to action was there on this video, and what are these global trends that are happening, and how could those potentially be likened to an overland company or a van building company or an e-bike company, or all these different I guess outputs that I eventually need to create. And I think that scrolling is pretty helpful to me because it's like a tactical scroll.
Tactical scrolling. That's my new goal for 2025. I like that.
There
That's
you
really
go.
it is interesting. You get, that algorithm does tee you up for a lot of different things if you're really paying attention to it. And it's interesting to think about creating a swipe file just based off of what you're catching online. I think a lot of people could really benefit from tactical scrolling. Um, well,
Definitely.
we always end every episode with a segment called BPC, brand product content, and I teed you up on this one. You're the guest, so I'd love to hear what are the things that you're interested in when it comes to the world of brand product content specifically.
Well, I wanted to recommend people to two Instagram channels who I don't really think are going to provide like super specific actionable strategy from consuming their content, but they are content creators that really inspire me. The first one is a guy named Jesse Dixon on Instagram, whose handle is Sacramento Food Forest. This is a guy who is an absolute obsessed nature wizard. Like, he has so much knowledge about redwood forests and their importance for fire mitigation, for example, and like all this stuff about the LA fires that we just saw, the importance of like natural biodiversity. It's really funny to plug this because it's kind of a boring topic that I think a lot of kids couldn't care less about. But the way that this creator does it is he has an absolutely infectious enthusiasm for what he talks about. He's like yelling at the camera half the time. He drops a lot of profanity, so like, maybe not safe for work, but he's so enthusiastic about what he's talking about and very knowledgeable about what he's talking about that it seems like a good way to educate people on something that they know should be important to them, like taking care of Mother Earth. And his way of doing it is amazing. So he has like 350,000 followers
Wow.
of just random average people who probably don't care about the environment to the extent that he does, but his enthusiasm is infectious and it just comes through and makes you feel like, dang, this is more important than I realized. We have to do something about this. So I think taking something from him is a really good. He has really good. I think he. I don't know how to say this. He's inspiring to me because of his ability to get the viewer excited about what he's excited about.
Absolutely.
And then the other creator that I really love, also nothing to do with the outdoor industry, is Danger Bean. So his handle is Danger Bean underscore 55. And he is a conglomerate of clever editing, relatable storytelling, amazing use of soundtracks to like build up this emotional climax with his videos. Uh, Insane epiphanies that are like important about the meaning of life, and then these hilarious twists. And his channel also has like a 500,000 followers, and all of his content is very easy to make because he's just talking about normal everyday stuff, but the way that he makes it is incredible. Like you feel like you walked into a Christopher Nolan film that was an hour and a half long, but he does it in 60 to 90 seconds. And he is an unfathomably good creator who tells amazing stories.
Yeah, big fan of that channel. I think I'm also just insanely jealous because I mean I know that there's a ton of work that goes into every single one of those, but he doesn't have to leave his house and he doesn't have to worry about whether it's sunlight or raining or whatever. And I think that's like the one thing that we haven't touched on at all. But when we were making bike videos, you're reliant on a lot of external factors to be able to be productive. I'm living through Portland winter right now where, it's cold and rainy all the time. And it's really challenging to go out and make a lot of new content without having to leave my house or leave
Right.
my city. And I don't know, part of me just like as a fellow creator, just being like, oh, must be nice. You don't even have to leave your house. But yeah, obviously the work goes in a lot of other places. So mad respect.
Yeah, he's able to resonate with people on such a deep level. I can only think of like probably two creators whose content either makes me laugh so much that I cry or just like feel something enough to get teary eyed. And he's
Yeah.
one of those.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a good one. Okay, my BPC is the Natural Selection Tour bike, which is about to happen in Queenstown in a couple weeks from now. They've done some events in the past, but this year is kind of the first big push of doing like a big series where there's a surf one and a mountain bike one. And the mountain bike one is in Queenstown, New Zealand, which I feel like there is a ton of amazing riding to be done. Queenstown is like, in my mind, I've been there a handful of times. It's kind of the mecca. And if you haven't been, you absolutely need to go. You lose your mind at Gorge Road. But ultimately, the fact that they are creating a new series of events with this natural selection tour and pulling together the athlete roster that they are, my only hope is that they absolutely crush it when it comes to the media side of things, because I think we've put together a lot of amazing events in the past. But you saw Rampage this year, pretty much every rider had a film crew with them. And I think they're starting to kind of get the message of like, wait, there's more to it than just being able to go top to bottom at this run. And that's great that 8 million people are watching, the Red Bull Rampage or whatever, but like there's more out there. There's something I could be doing with this. So I'm excited about there being more opportunities to bring together more sort of free ride or non-traditional style athletes. I think Braden Bringhurst's event is also another one of those where it's like you don't need to be a UCI racer to be able to show up here. But then how does an athlete capitalize on that moment, and what's the media that comes from that? That's the big question. Are you going to be able to push beyond the bounds of an event and really get a lot of value out of it as an athlete? Fingers crossed for all those guys. But I'm excited about
Right.
that
Yeah.
natural selection tour. Could be the first of something really interesting.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see what kind of media comes out of that too, because I would say, a lot of those top level athletes don't have a pattern of relying on storytelling, right? They rely on the shock factor of the stunts that are being performed. And the more they can relate to the people who fund our industry, the average Joes, I think the better it will be for our sport as a whole, and the better it's going to be for their viewership and their stats coming out of the event.
I mean, we're probably going to find out why Rampage works. Is it how gnarly the trail or the course itself is, Or is it Red Bull's overpowered ability to tell story around the crazy course? Now, it's definitely the middle of the Venn diagram, I think, but you're going to have this crazy course in Queenstown. If you can't bring the storytelling, are you still going to get the same impact that you would have gotten had you done those same tricks at Red Bull Rampage? Giant
Yeah.
question mark.
Yep.
Well, lots more for athletes to sort of unpack and learn. And Dialed Creator is definitely a great way for a lot of people to kind of get the ball moving for them, because I think you're 100% spot on that there are way more opportunities out there for both the athletes, but as the brands as well. I think there's so much more out there. And as we get better and better at all this stuff by utilizing these kind of boot camps, I think it only becomes better for the entire industry, for bringing new people in, for launching new products, for building brands, for building careers. This is a really exciting development, and I'm really excited to see where it goes. So, congratulations on the launch.
Me too, man. Yeah, if we can see just a much larger pool of creators who are getting those million view videos every now and then, and baselining around, 100,000 or 200,000 views per video, way more of the world is going to see our sport. Way more of the brands that are outside of mountain biking are going to want to work with us. And I think that's just going to inject more money into our industry, going to put more eyeballs on our industry. How could that not be good for everybody getting involved? More bikes being sold to people who haven't been interested in mountain biking before, things like that. So let's keep it rolling.
Right on. Onwards and upwards.